This morning I'm asking, do you agree with Yvette Cooper that the UK should take in 10,000 migrants? It's all over the front pages of the newspapers today. The Labour leadership candidate Yvette Cooper has urged the government to take a greater responsibility for the thousands of refugees crossing into Eastern Europe, Greece, Italy and France. She says Britain must be true to its values and history and take at least 10,000 people fleeing political turmoil in the Middle East. Ms Cooper has described Britain's stance on the migration crisis as immoral, cowardly and not the British way. To quote her directly, she said, "If every city took refugee families, if every London borough took 10 families, if every county council took 10 families, if Scotland, Wales and every English region played their part, then in a month we'd have nearly 10,000 more places for vulnerable refugees fleeing danger, seeking safety." Atul Hatwal is the director of the Migration Matters Trust. He says he's pleased Yvette Cooper has been brave enough to say what other politicians should have said a long time ago.
One of the tragedies of the debate in the last few years is not enough politicians have been this brave. She has made the case. It's late, but better late than never. And actually, it will change the tenor of the broader political debate because it gives people like the Prime Minister, people like the government, some cover to have a more rational and sane approach to dealing with this refugee crisis.
Franziska Keller is a German politician who specialises in migration. She's told the BBC it's anti-European to turn your back on the migrants.
Nobody can shy away from looking at the eyes of people who are fleeing from war, from bombing, from persecution. And we as Europeans cannot say, you have to stay outside, we will not let you in. It's part of the European identity to help people. The Geneva Convention on Asylum was invented in Europe. I think it's an invention we should be very proud of.
Well, I want to hear from you this morning. Perhaps you agree with Yvette Cooper and those experts on migration who argue it is our utmost duty as British people to give homes to migrants. Well, there may be some of you listening today who feel that we already have so many problems of our own in this country that to take any migrants at all is just not practical. Pick up the phone, come on and share your views. I'd love to hear from you today. Do you agree with Yvette Cooper that the UK should take in 10,000 migrants? Text already coming through on this. Bill and Milton Keynes says, JVS, if we take 10,000 migrants into this country, like Yvette Cooper wants, does it stop there? Or will she or another do-gooder insist we can find room for more and more and then more? No, it's time to say enough is enough and close the borders. David Campbell-Bannerman is a Conservative MEP and former UKIP deputy leader. Good morning to you, David.
Morning, Jonathan.
Good morning. So what do you make of Yvette Cooper's comments? Do you agree with her that we should accept 10,000 migrants?
No, I don't, Jonathan. I mean, I don't think it's going to make much difference, sadly. I mean, the numbers are far greater than that. I mean, we're getting almost 10 times as many as 10,000 every week turning up in Europe, in Greece, in Italy. It's a major problem, and the EU has made it far worse by allowing people to move across the EU against actually UN laws. I mean, UN laws say that you have to, if you're going to become an asylum seeker, you must declare that in the first country, safe country you come to, which should be Greece or Italy or whatever. It is a mess. Don't forget, we are spending £800 million a year helping Syria now. You know, we're giving money to Syria to help with this crisis. We're giving money to United Nations to help with camps. They're already looking after millions of people, not 10,000, millions of people in Turkey, in Jordan, in Iraq. You know, there's millions in Iraq of displaced people who are being looked after with our money and our contributions already. I don't think 10,000 is going to make a difference. I don't think it's a very sensible proposal.
At the moment, though, it would appear we're not doing very much at all. And isn't it important to at least make a gesture? At least to say, well, OK, we recognise that Germany's doing a huge amount. Some of those other European countries that are much closer to the Middle East are having to deal with this. So we'll pull our weight. We will at least make a contribution to the problem.
As one of your listeners said, you know, if you allow in 10,000, why, you know, one day, then why not 100,000 the next, or even 1 million? I think this is the problem: is that, you know, the numbers are so huge that this isn't going to make much difference, but it will The problem with the EU approach is actually they've given the impression that, to desperate people, I have every sympathy for their plight, but this is not the best way of helping them. It's giving them false hope. They think they can pay these traffickers big money to get into Europe, and then, they will get a house and the benefits and live off us, our support in their own countries. I think that's false hope. What we've got to do is ensure that the UN and other bodies and charities can provide proper support for these people in suitable camps, whilst the war is going on, unfortunately. And that is what's already happening, in Turkey. It's not ideal for anyone, I know that, but until the war ends and normality can be restored, then I think that is a way of keeping people safe and alive, in fairly decent surrounds. The UN does a great job on that.
Stay where you are, David, if you will, because I want to bring Dan Hodges in, who's, of course, a columnist for the Daily Telegraph and has written a very interesting piece on Yvette Cooper's comments. Good morning to you, Dan.
Good morning.
So you have praised her courage to say what most other politicians, what most other important politicians would never dream of saying at the moment. Do you, therefore, disagree completely with what David has just said, or do you recognise why he feels that if you allow 10,000 in today, where does it end?
No, I don't agree with what David just said. I mean, to be frank, David should be ashamed of what David's just said. The argument that David's put forward that because we can't do everything, we should do nothing is ridiculous. We already have a paltry 200 refugees in the UK. I don't think anyone is suggesting that means 2 million are going to turn up tomorrow. The reality is, David says, it won't make any difference. It will certainly make a difference to the 10,000 people who are fleeing persecution. And this is the point that has to be emphasised. These are people who are fleeing persecution. These are people who are trying to escape war in Syria, who are trying to escape from the clutches of ISIS, to try and escape from people who, as I'm not going to list on air the sort of brutality that we see daily being handed out by the butchers of ISIS. And the idea, as David suggests, that we should leave this to Greece, or we should leave this to Germany, or we should leave this to Hungary, and we in the United Kingdom should simply turn our backs on people who, as I say, are genuinely fleeing persecution, is shameful, actually. I mean, it's completely and utterly shameful.
So 10,000, do you think is a good figure, or would you not even put a limit on the number of migrants or refugees that we welcome?
I think it's an important start. I think we have to. Anybody who is looking at this crisis with anything like a dispassionate eye understands that it is no longer simply possible to fall back on the safe first country principle. You can't have a situation where the first country that these people arrive in are their final destination, because obviously there is simply not the capacity for a country such as Greece, for example, to cope with that. This crisis has to be dealt with on a pan-European level. This is precisely why we have a European Union to deal with issues like this. Now, as we've seen, Germany is. I think the figure I saw today, Germany is currently preparing to absorb 800,000 refugees. I think for us to absorb 10,000 as a starting point is perfectly.
As a starting point, though, you see that's kind of the point that David was making, isn't it? That this is just the beginning, and where if you start allowing 10,000 in today, where does it end?
But the point is, you have to begin somewhere. You cannot.
Jonathan, can I say?
Can I just finish?
Jonathan, can I
just let Dan finish that point, and then by all means come in, David.
You have to start somewhere. You cannot simply throw these people back into the sea, which is effectively what we're doing at the moment.
David,
I think that's all very emotional, Dan. Well over the top. You will know, Dan, that only last week, we had figures showing we have the largest net immigration into Britain ever, I think, 330,000 people net. We're letting those people into the UK, we're looking after them, we're providing opportunities. Now that's controversial enough, to be honest, and the gross figure is nearly 700,000. So, you're talking about 10,000. I mean, we're already letting in about 700,000 a year, that's the gross figure. And that is putting huge strain on schools and hospitals and GPs and all of that. And the British people don't want any more. They're very happy to help with humanitarian assistance, with charities. There's a far better way of helping people, and that is, through these camps, closer to where people have come from in Syria. And that is the right way to go. And I think, this kind of emotional stuff is, I think, very badly played, And there are problems now in Germany. There's asylum centres being set alight in Germany. I was speaking to a German MEP last night here in Brussels, and they're very worried. We don't want Germany going back to its dark past, frankly, because of the numbers it's taking. The whole thing is crazy. The EU's got it totally wrong, as ever. And what we need is a sensible policy where, we are contributing big money, billions a year already, to help. And that is absolutely right. We must help these people. But just giving them false hope and trying to open the door is not going to work.
Dan, the thing I don't understand, and I'm sure many of the listeners this morning in Beds, Herts and Bucks don't understand, is where are these 10,000 people? If we were to allow 10,000 people in, where are they going to live? We know that we don't even have enough housing for the people that already live in this country. So where are these refugees going to live?
Well, as Yvette Cooper pointed out, we have the capacity to find places for 10 people in the towns of the United Kingdom. As I've said, Germany is finding places for 800,000 people. We have the capacity to do that.
They're a bigger country, though, aren't they?
But not to the scale of 800,000 compared to 10,000. The point is that we have the capacity and we have the resources to do this. It's a lack of political will, and it's just.
But then, if that's true, then this housing crisis that we're all told we have in this country doesn't exist. If there's spare capacity, this housing crisis that we are constantly told about by politicians, it is purely a figment of our imagination.
No,
Must
obviously there are pressures on housing and other resources. That does not mean we do not have the capacity for 10 people to find 10 people in a London borough. There is resource, and we can make resource.
But that will be 10. Available. But that will then mean. That will mean 10 people who live in this country already who then can't have that housing. Is that fair? Is that right?
Is it fair that we meet our obligations to those seeking persecution? Yes, it is undoubtedly fair. With the greatest respect to David, I was a little bit confused by what David's point there. On one hand, David was accusing me of being emotional, and then on the next second, he seemed to be saying that we should bow to the wishes of people who burn down refugees.
No, it wasn't saying that at all, Dan. Please.
Well, that's what you said, David.
No, it wasn't, Dan. I don't think you get it.
You just did.
No.
One of the reasons we have.
Sorry.
Let David clarify his point.
Yeah, let's let David clarify.
Yeah, again, Dan, you're twisting the arguments. What I'm saying is that in Germany, there's a major problem with the numbers. 800,000, they've taken asylum seekers. Yeah. I mean, but remember, Germany's population is falling. And actually, a report yesterday showed that in 30 years' time, we in Britain, if we go on with the numbers, increase in numbers in Britain, we'll be larger than Germany. And we're in a much smaller space. So do we want, everything to be built over, to really have to fight to get GP appointments, wait weeks? We cannot take the load of people in Britain. We're already a crowded country. Thanks to Labour, by the way, our population's gone up 6 million since 1997. It used to be stable for about 15 years, and we used to allow in asylum seekers. So Labour's disastrous policy, trying to change the demographics of Britain, has led to really, really serious implications. We're too crowded, basically.
So, David, what you're saying is your local GP surgery does not have the capacity to deal with 10 more people.
That's not. You're talking about 10 people. I'm talking about the 6 million that Labour, thanks to your kind of advice, have let into Britain. That's
I tell you what, David, your signal is just breaking up a little bit. But if I can just jump in and respond to that point that you made, Dan, you say your local GP surgery couldn't handle 10 more people. I don't know whereabouts you live, but here in Beds, Herts and Bucks, I know that particularly in the Milton Keynes area, most doctors' surgeries in the Milton Keynes area have so many people that if you want an appointment, if you wake up feeling ill this morning, you should have been down outside queuing around the block outside your doctor's surgery to even stand a chance of getting an appointment. That's the situation here. Now, people, for example, in Milton Keynes may say to the likes of Yvette Cooper, well, it's all well and good saying 10 more people. That's 10 more people that may well be queuing up outside the doctor's surgery trying to get an appointment. Things are pretty desperate.
So what is the length of waiting time at the doctor's surgery in Milton Keynes?
Well, it's a nightmare. You don't get an appointment.
No, you said it. No, what's the waiting time?
I don't quite understand your point.
Well, you said there is a long waiting time and implied it.
There's a queue. There's a queue to try and get an appointment that day in places like Milton Keynes. Now that shows surely the pressure that GP surgeries are under already. Right. If Milton Keynes, for example, were to take in 10 more people, that could potentially be 10 more people all trying to get an appointment at that doctor's surgery at the same day. Right,
but I think one of the important things is we sort of deconstruct some of these things that people hear. Now, you've said there is a waiting time. People are having to queue up. I'm asking what is the waiting time if somebody rings up this morning to try and get an appointment?
You can't ring up. That's the point. These doctors' surgeries apparently, and I'm talking to you based on the stories that I've heard. Every time we talk about GPs and doctors' surgeries on this radio station, I get people, particularly in the Milton Keynes area, phoning up saying, if we want to see a doctor today, there's no point phoning because you can't get through because there are so many people trying to get through. The only way really you can guarantee that you're going to get an appointment is to go to the surgery and to queue up outside.
Right, but we don't actually know what the waiting time is then.
Sorry, say that again, Dan.
We're working on the basis of anecdote here. I mean, I think we're slightly getting on.
Listen to this text from Chris of Milton Keynes, who's texting on this very point. My girlfriend was told that she had to wait a month for a routine appointment at a doctor's surgery in Milton Keynes. Well, there's a first-hand answer to your question.
Yeah, well, fine. If people are being asked to wait a month, then obviously that's unacceptable. I have to say, I find that.
But doesn't that demonstrate the sheer pressure that resources like doctor's surgeries are under already without welcoming in 10,000 more migrants?
Yes, if it is a regular occurrence that people ring up their doctor's surgery and are told you can't have anything for a month, then obviously that is a serious problem. I don't actually think that is probably the experience that most people have.
Another text here that's come through. It takes you have to wait 10 days to see a doctor in Hoddesdon.
Right. So is it 10 days or is it a month?
No, there's a completely different part. We're talking about Hoddesdon, which is in Hertfordshire, and Milton Keynes, which is obviously in Buckinghamshire. Right, so there's two different areas within our area. In Hoddesdon, a doctor's appointment can take you 10 days to wait for it. In Milton Keynes, you can wait a month for a regular appointment if you're not prepared to go and stand and queue around the corner first thing in the morning. Let me bring Bill in Milton Keynes in. He's called in listening to this conversation. Hello, Bill.
Hello, good morning.
Hi, Bill. What would you like to say about the doctor's surgery issue?
Right. This person who's on about doctor's surgery, I'll explain what the wait is in Milton Keynes. We live opposite a surgery. They open at 7 o'clock in the morning. You have to queue from about 6:45, which is 20 to 30 deep every morning.
20 to 30 people are all queuing up outside the doctor's surgery in the morning.
That's right, yes, yeah. You go in at 7 o'clock when they open the doors. They give you a number. You have to go back at 8 o'clock, queue up in number order, and they will give you an appointment sometime that day. However, if you want a routine appointment, you're looking at 3 to 5 weeks.
For a routine appointment?
For a routine appointment.
See, this is the thing, Dan, and there may be people listening. Thank you for your call, Bill. There may be people listening saying it would be nice if we could welcome in 10,000 migrants, but if already our system is under this amount of pressure with the number of people living here at the moment, how are we supposed to cope? And it's all well and good saying 10 extra families per area, but that's 10 extra families that will have children that will need to go to schools, 10 extra families that will need the doctor when they get ill, 10 extra families that will need somewhere to live. It's all adding pressure, isn't it?
But if there is the degree obviously we're going to need to look at ways at alleviating those pressures in the system anyway, because of the indigenous increase in the population anyway. Just setting aside the issue of migration. Now, the reality is, I'm pretty sure we can find a way. We can all find a way. I'm sure the National Health Service, I'm sure the education system, I'm sure the employment system can find a way of ensuring that 10 people in each London borough, 10 people in each town in this country, in England, Wales, Scotland, can be absorbed to prevent them staying in Syria and being murdered at the hands of people like ISIS, or basically drowning in their hundreds in the Mediterranean, as is currently the case. I think we as a nation have the capacity to do that. I think we're clever enough. I think we've got the resources. And I also think we are a morally compassionate enough nation to do our bit in the midst of what Yvette Cooper accurately said is the biggest refugee crisis since the Second World War. Because otherwise, we are basically saying to these people, I'm very sorry, but you have to understand that if you come here, I'm going to have to queue up at a doctor's surgery at 7 o'clock in the morning, so I'm afraid you're going to have to go back and be murdered by ISIS. Now, I don't really think, as Yvette Cooper said yesterday, that's the country we really are.
Just to raise a couple more issues, because you have, and I'm sorry to ambush you with this, but we did talk about the doctor's surgery, and you were questioning whether it was true what I was saying, and my listeners are texting in and phoning in now to make this point. Lisa says, I live in Sandy, which is in Bedfordshire, not in Milton Keynes, it's in Bedfordshire. I'm 33 weeks pregnant. I need a doctor's appointment, and I got told that I could see a doctor in 3 weeks' time. That is the waiting time at the moment. So this is all over. This is all over Beds, Hearts and Bucks. People are having to wait these amounts of time at the moment. This is the amount of pressure that doctors' surgeries are under at the moment. Sarah in Milton Keynes says pre-booked appointments at my surgery in Milton Keynes are at least 3 weeks, unless it is an emergency, when they'll get a doctor to call you. You can't get through on the phone, you have to go and queue, or you're told to go to the drop-in centre at the local hospital. It's a very real pressure for people. And maybe it's these kinds of first-hand pressures that people are witnessing on a daily basis that is then affecting their judgment on how welcoming we should be to 10,000 more migrants.
And it may well be, but what I'm questioning is if there are these pressures as a result of thousands of refugees flooding into the country? I'm not entirely sure. As I say, if there are these pressures... It's
just sheer numbers, isn't it? It's the population, particularly if you look at here in Beds, Hearts and Bucks, we're close to London, there's lots of employment opportunities. We have a lot of people who want to move to this country and live in this area.
And that may be the case, but I'm sure you would appreciate the dangers there are in allowing to go unchallenged the idea that pressures on public services as they exist are as primarily or as a direct result of thousands of immigrants flooding into England and the rest of the country. That is not necessarily the issue that we're facing here, is it?
Okay.
I'm sure you'd also accept that whatever pressures there are, as Yvette Cooper pointed out yesterday, we would have the capacity, if we had the political will, to find space for 10 more people in each major town in the United Kingdom.
And that is very much worth debating. Dan, thank you so much for your time. Dan Hodges, who of course is a commentator for the Daily Telegraph. Thank you as well to David Campbell Bannerman, who's a Conservative MEP and the former Deputy Leader of UKIP. Well, what do you make of that point that Dan is making? That ultimately, yes, our services are under huge amounts of pressure. But if we were to welcome 10,000 migrants over, and if the politicians said, well, look, we recognise that the system is going to be under even more pressure, so we have to find a way at the same time of relieving some of that pressure, does that then make it okay? Do we then live in a world where we can say, well, it's okay, because we're going to welcome in 10,000 people, but the government is also going to adjust things so that we have more doctors, so that we have more schools, so that we have more houses, so it doesn't have to be a problem? Maybe that's the way you look at this. First, though, back to today's big phone-in, and it's the biggest story around. I'm asking whether you agree with Yvette Cooper that the UK should take in 10,000 migrants. Labour leadership candidate Yvette Cooper has urged the government to take a greater responsibility for the thousands of refugees crossing into Eastern Europe, Greece, Italy and France. She says that Britain must be true to its values and history and take at least 10,000 people fleeing political turmoil in the Middle East. Ms Cooper has described Britain's stance on the migration crisis as immoral, cowardly and not the British way. To quote her directly, she said, "If every city took refugee families, if every London borough took 10 families, if every county council took 10 families, if Scotland, Wales and every English region played their part, then in a month we'd have nearly 10,000 more places for vulnerable refugees fleeing danger, seeking safety." Well, I'm asking you whether you agree with her. Do you agree with Yvette Cooper that the UK should take in 10,000 migrants? Before I get back to your calls, let me do some more texts that are coming through. Brian says, no, we do not have the infrastructure to cope with any more immigrants. No houses, no schools, no doctors, no hospital beds. We do not want them, says Brian. Mark in Bedford has contacted me to comment on what the former UKIP member and Conservative MEP David Campbell-Bannerman has said this morning. This man says taking 10,000 people won't make any difference. Tell that to the 10,000 who could have been offered a home and a new life. He also asks, why is there always UKIP or ex-UKIP on your show? Well, Mark, it's because we try to represent all sides of every debate on this programme, and David Campbell-Bannerman represents a view contrary to the likes of Dan Hodges. Hence, we wanted to hear from both sides of this argument. I hope that answers your question. Alec is in High Wycombe. Hello to you, Alec.
Good morning, Jonathan.
Good morning. Do you agree with Yvette Cooper, then, that we should accept 10,000 migrants?
Absolutely not. I think she should keep her big trap shut. You know, Labour, during their term of office last time, brought this country to its knees, and here she is now telling, the Conservatives how to run the country. I mean, we just haven't got the infrastructure.
But we could.
Everything that you said, you've mirrored a lot of what I've
Yeah, I know, but Dan Hodges had an interesting way of looking at it because he was
another numph. God, my heart was beating. God, if I ever saw that bloke, it's absolute rubbish. We cannot cope. I'm going to put something to you.
But hang on one second. Let me carry on making the point, which seemingly made you rather angry. Dan Hodges was saying that if our system at the moment, if our resources are overstretched at the moment, that could be solved if there was a political will to do that. If there was a political will to, for example, get more doctors, to get more beds in hospitals, to get more school places, if there was a political will to do that and politicians were prepared to find the money to resource that, then we could do it. And then we wouldn't necessarily be under so much pressure at the moment, which would then potentially mean that a local area could take in 10 more people.
So more pressure on the taxpayer. They've shut A&Es. And I want to tell you something about doctors. Mother-in-law had an ear problem. They don't deal with that. They shut the ear, nose and throat at High Wycombe. You have to drive all the way to a converted house in Beaconsfield. Absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Do you know, I will put something to you. Do you know, all those people that fought in the First and Second World War, if they had a crystal ball, would they not have bothered? That's how I feel. And Jonathan, I'm sorry if I'm angry, but, I don't pay tax. I don't pay tax because I'm a criminal. I don't pay tax literally because that's my protest. I don't break the law. I earn under what you can, but I don't want to be part of a system I don't believe in. I suppose if you're born into what is now, you accept it, but I wasn't. I come from a different era and life was a lot different then. Life was a lot easier. And
but realistically, Alec, and Dan Hodges was right.
Realistically,
hang on, Dan Hodges was right in what he said. But it's all well and good us saying things like, "Well, that would be 10 extra people in High Wycombe who'd all want to use a doctor's surgery," but that may be 10 people that would not be murdered by ISIS. Doesn't that make it worth it?
I'm going to be honest here. I don't care about ISIS. The people that come into this country that make it across on the channel, on the train, should be put on the next train back. I don't care. I mean, it makes me angry, so angry, because we're all suffering. We're all suffering.
You do, Alec. You do care.
In 10 years, that will double.
You do care.
I mean, they get, money for having children. They get a family allowance.
Alec,
it's like sort of.
Alec, you do care. Alec, you do care. If there were a family, no, you do.
Sorry, I really don't.
No,
care.
you do.
I've had enough.
You do.
This country is suffering, and I said last week that it's becoming uncomfortable in this country, and it is.
You do care in that if you saw a family, if you saw a mum and a dad and 2 little children on a boat, and the boat was sinking, and those people had desperately fled their country, where everything they knew, they have fled that country because they want to try and save their children's lives, you'd care about that.
Listen, nobody wants to see that. It's a bad thing. I'm not saying that but they shouldn't be on that boat. I don't believe a lot of them are fleeing.
But they're unlucky but they're just human beings like you and me. They're just unlucky that they weren't born in High Wycombe.
But if there's 10 extra houses in 10 extra boroughs, then give them to people that have been waiting 8 years, because that happens. It makes me sick that people are written off because other people come into this country, and when you just can't send them to a school because they don't speak English. It is the taxpayer is paying for this in a way. We can't afford it. They've shut A&Es, as I said. Doctors' surgeries can't cope. I had to wait 6 weeks for an appointment last Christmas, just after Christmas, by the way. And I cancelled it in the end because I got better. So, sorry, my mouth's gone dry. I'm really cross about this.
I can tell, but stay where you are. Let me bring Jenny Marklew in, who's from the MK Green Party. I think it might be interesting to...
Oh, here we go. Yeah, go on.
Well, I just thought it'd be interesting to hear how she responds to your point.
I know that. Yeah, go on. Yeah,
Alec says he just doesn't care about the migrants. He doesn't think we have any room, and we should stop even discussing the fact that we may welcome more in because we haven't got space, there isn't the infrastructure. Do you agree with that?
Well, of course, I guess that I don't agree with that. And I'm not, and it's really, actually really makes me sad listening to Alec and his arguments and the way he feels and where he's placing blame for those feelings.
He's representative, though, of lots of people, isn't he?
I know. And it is sad because these are people who have had to, you've made the points already, they've had to flee their homes, they wouldn't leave if they didn't have to. They've left everything they know, their homes, their businesses, their jobs, their families. They've probably already lost many relatives. They've had to really fight to get over here, walking through desert, swimming in sea, going on boats that are dangerous, risking their lives every step of the way to get here. And then to get here and have people feel that way about you, feel so negatively about you, because of a situation that is nothing to do with them, the closing of doctor's surgeries, the lack of school places, the lack of homes, that is nothing to do with these migrants. It's a completely separate issue.
But the thing is, if we
have to think about, but it's a short term. They will be coming here in the short term.
But if we as a country,
to be in the short term.
If we as a country were going to adopt a policy where we bring in every single person that has got a rubbish life in their home country, we as a country, we as an island.
Proposed.
Well, hang on a minute. Yeah, but why isn't it being proposed? Why is it acceptable to say, okay, well, we'll help this group of people who are in need, but those other people we won't? When I went to Argentina last year, there was a child. Hang on, Jenny. Let me make the point. There was a child that walks for 3 hours in the morning with one leg and one eye, and half an arm missing. Walks for 3 hours to go into the capital, Buenos Aires, to beg at the traffic lights. Now, why aren't we saying that poor young children like that shouldn't be brought over and we should look after them, we should care for them with our National Health Service? It's because surely there has to be a limit, and we can't take responsibility for all of the world's woes.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you're talking about is something that's quite different. that child isn't in a war-torn country. That child has a horrible...
It's in a country that doesn't look after it, though.
No, you're right, and it does. But these people are slightly different. These people are in a country where they will literally be murdered if they don't leave, and that's why they're fleeing. Because if they don't, they'll be murdered. And I hope you don't mind, but I'd quite like to turn the direction of the conversation slightly into something that I think we're not talking about enough, and that's the way that we're treating refugees compared to the way that other countries are treating refugees. If you look at Germany, they're welcoming refugees. I mean, there's a small portion of the population that are really against refugees and are quite angry about the number of people that are coming in. But in contrast to that, the majority of the population are welcoming them, giving up spaces in their own homes for these people to come and live with them because they appreciate how much need they have.
I'm pleased you
and
brought
also
up.
In Iceland, you have 10,000 people, 11,000 I think it is actually, have said that they will pay for people to come over. They will give them spaces in their homes, these refugees from these war-torn countries who, if they don't leave, will be murdered.
I'm pleased you brought up this idea of living in your own house, because surely that is what this kind of comes down to, isn't it? If you're someone that feels that we as a country should take in 10,000 more migrants, then surely you're the kind of person that would say, I'm happy to have a family move in with me in my house. I mean, would you have a Syrian family move in with you?
I would have as many people as would be able to fit in my house. I'd be able to take in 2 people, maybe 3 at a push.
Right. How many homeless people have you got living with you at the moment then?
I don't have any homeless people living with me at the moment.
Why not? Because if you're somebody that says my home should be a home for anyone that is in desperate need of a home, then why haven't you already done this?
I'm talking about having people who have to leave their home because they're going to be murdered if they're not. And I think you make a good point, and it's something I'd not thought about, and it is a valid point.
It's all well and good saying, I'd let a Syrian family move in with me, but it's easy to say that because it's not going to happen. It's not.
I've thought about having someone who's homeless come in.
Why don't you?
Say, would you like to come and live at my house for a few nights, have some rest, have a bath and a shower, and I'll give you some food? I thought about doing that.
Yeah, well, you've thought about it, but you haven't done it. And that's the point, isn't it? It's all well and good and very easy to say, the government should be doing this, the government should be letting in 10,000 people. But if it actually came down to personal responsibility and all the people saying that we should welcome many more refugees into this country, if it came down to those refugees having to live in their houses, I wonder whether people would be quite so keen.
I think if there was a programme to organise it, then yes, and maybe that's something we should do. Maybe we should organise ourselves together and find people that are willing to. And this is a temporary thing. These people don't want to be here forever, and they will make their own lives, and they will find ways to support themselves. But maybe we should organise something where people who are willing, only people who are willing, who have some space, who see the crisis and see how terrible it is, can offer some space in their home.
Alec, if there was somebody really desperate who was fleeing the likes of Syria because they were going to be murdered in Syria, and if they turned up at your front door in High Wycombe and said, can I have a bed for a few weeks or maybe a few months until I can find myself a job and get myself started in this country, would you not welcome them?
Honestly, they'd get the door slammed in their face. That's how I feel. Sorry about that, but that's how I feel. Those are my principles, and I will stick to them. Just on the last thing, Jonathan, if you've got a bridge, you keep loading it up. One day it will collapse. That's what will happen to Britain. There's going to be big trouble in this country one day. People, when they reach breaking point, there'll be lack of job. Every time you let people in, there's less houses, less jobs, and more pressure on the infrastructure and the taxman, and the tax system.
Alec,
yes.
Why do you feel like that's the fault of the migrants? Why aren't you angry with our government for not building more houses or not taking better care of our hospitals?
Why must they come to Britain? If they escape and they make it to the nearest country, surely they've escaped. They've achieved their goal, haven't they? Why do they?
There are millions in Turkey. There are hundreds of thousands in Germany. There are thousands in France. Everywhere is having to deal with these migrants.
Why don't they stay there?
But hang on, isn't this about we are part of Europe as well? And it's about... hang on one sec. It's about us just trying to help in some way and show that we are doing our bit.
We've already done our bit. We're full, Jonathan. You know, as I said, I'm sorry to repeat myself, it's making life uncomfortable for the people that have always worked for this country. I think, you know, Great Britain, it isn't great anymore. It was once, but it isn't.
It is, Alec. I mean, compared to most other... surely this whole debate demonstrates that Britain is great.
The stuff you buy in this country is made in Japan, Germany and China.
Oh, that doesn't matter. This is still a great country. It's still a great country, and the fact that so many people would like to come and live in this country surely demonstrates that this is still a great country to live in. So I don't think we should start running our own country down constantly.
If you come into this country, there's a system that will support you, even though you haven't got a job.
Well, no, it's a country that will allow you opportunity. That's the most important thing. It's a country that will look after you if you fall on hard times. It's a country that will stop you dying in the street.
Where the hell would I get a job? I know I've only got 2 years before I retire, but where the hell would I get a job? I'm a highly skilled engineer, but I don't sort of go on any system to support me.
Okay, that is your right, Alec. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jenny Marklew, as well, who's from the Milton Keynes Green Party. Andrew says, I'm afraid I agree with Alec, that this country has become very uncomfortable for Brits who have generations of family born here. I walked through Watford yesterday and I felt very uncomfortable. A town where I was born is now unrecognisable by the amount of immigrants, mainly Muslim and Polish. The England I knew has gone, says Andrew. Well, what do you think? Do you agree with Yvette Cooper that the UK should accept 10,000 migrants? Yes, lots of you wanting to have your say on the big phone in today, which is great. Keep your calls coming through. I'm asking if you agree with Yvette Cooper that the UK should accept 10,000 migrants. Labour leadership candidate Yvette Cooper has urged the government to take a greater responsibility for the thousands of refugees coming into Eastern Europe, Greece, Italy and France. She says Britain must be true to its values and history and take at least 10,000 people fleeing political turmoil in the Middle East. Ms. Cooper has described Britain's stance on the migration crisis as immoral, cowardly and not the British way. Well, I'm asking you whether you agree with her. Alan is in Milton Keynes. Hello, Alan.
Morning, Jonathan.
Morning, Alan. Do you agree with Yvette Cooper?
No, I think they're all just a total bunch of hypocrites, to be honest with you. I mean, I'd like Yvette Cooper to actually, as you've been mentioning, take in one person from those 10,000, just one.
Yvette Cooper said yesterday that already after making the comments, she had heard from lots of people that were already saying that they would welcome migrants into their homes.
Well, in that case, the person you spoke to a few minutes ago, was it Jenny?
Yeah.
Who said she would like to do it. Why doesn't you ring up the local council and offer to put up a homeless person today and then call you back later in your programme and tell you how she's getting on? If that's how they're all so eager. Yvette Cooper wouldn't take in anybody, not even a single woman who was desperate. And if she would, why doesn't she do it? I'll tell you why, Jonathan. This country, this hot potato of immigration is absolutely the make and break in the next election. And whatever happens, people can say what they want anywhere at all, but come the next election, the public are going to say what they think. And the guy that was just talking about going through Watford, this country simply is not anything like it was 30 years ago. We have something over 18 million people in this country as a result of immigration. And so the trouble is we've been fed all of this propaganda by the government of how good this is, how good that is, but you don't see the politicians volunteering.
Did you just say 18 million?
Well, with 30% of our country is now a result of immigration that's gone back.
I thought the figure that we were talking about last week was there are 8 million people in this country that are non-British born.
Oh, you're talking about non-British, you're talking about foreigners. I'm talking about the result of immigration.
So you're including anybody... Yeah, but how far back do you want to go on that, then?
No, I'm not saying... No, I'm simply saying if you go back 40 years, when the doors were open for immigrants to come to this country, the result of that is that 30% of our population is now a result of that immigration. So I don't see how anybody can say that immigration doesn't have an effect on our country. If anybody can say to me that, 15 million people plus have not had an impact on our country, they need their brain tested. It has.
But this is a country that has historically been built on immigration. I mean,
so am I. My mother came from the Irish.
But exactly, that's the point. This idea that there is some kind of inherent right for British-born people, because British-born people, if you trace their ancestry back, it all starts and ends in this country. It's just not right. This country has always been built on people who have moved here from around the world.
Yeah, Jonathan, the UK, everyone in the UK now, probably apart from the Caledonians in Scotland, who appear to be the first organised immigrants from Europe, all of us have come from Europe. So we are all immigrants. This is not the argument, though, Jonathan, is it?
But surely the argument is about people dying, people being murdered, people being killed, and saying, is Great Britain going to stand on the sidelines and say, well, it's a shame, but, we're full. My doctor's... It took me half an hour to get through to my doctor's surgery this morning. Is that the kind of decision-making we are going to use when we're looking at people who otherwise are going to be murdered?
Well, let's be real then, Jonathan. Take yourself and take myself. Surely, even if you don't have a spare bedroom, you could take one person in, couldn't you? Could you not, Jonathan, like me, take one person in and just simply give them a settee to sleep on for a month? Could you not do it, Jonathan? Seriously.
Well, are you asking would I want to, or could I theoretically do it? I mean, of course, theoretically I could do it. Would I want to do it? No, I don't want anybody else living in my house, whether it's British or whether it's anybody else. I don't want to live with anybody else. But I'm not being hypocritical. I'm not being hypocritical this morning and sitting here demanding that we allow 10,000 people in.
No. What I'm saying is, Jonathan, is that all these people are saying we must take these people in because, they're suffering, they're threatened with murder, everything else. Okay, fine. So why don't they pick up the phone and then go down, why don't they go down to Calais, go down to Dover, and actually say, hello, do you want somewhere to live? A person walking down the street or trying to climb in the back of lorries, and say to them, look, come back with me, I've got a spare room. Or, come back with me, I've got a settee, you can stand there for a week, 2 weeks. Do they do it? No. Would you do it? No. Would I do it? No. The people that are on your programme today, would they do it? Would Yvette Cooper do it? No. Why? Because what they want to do, they want to be the grand receptor of all of these people in dire straits, and they want them to be done by someone else. They want the council to find them an empty house.
And Alan is right. Thank you for your call, Alan. Alan's right in what he says there, isn't he? That ultimately people... It's very easy to say we should be doing this, but ultimately what they mean is somebody else in this country should be doing this. Not me, but somebody else. Is there anybody actually listening to the programme that can honestly, hand on heart, say you would let a family of refugees move into your house? We're taking more of your calls on this morning's Big Phone In, so many of you wanting to have your say. And interesting angles coming up. I know it's an issue that just will not go away, and of course we will reflect it whenever it is big in the news agenda. We're talking about the migrant/refugee situation that we have, and the latest comments by the Labour leadership candidate Yvette Cooper, who's urged the government to take a greater responsibility for the thousands of refugees crossing into Eastern Europe, Greece, Italy and France. She says Britain must be true to its values and history, and this is the crucial bit. She thinks that we need to take in 10,000 people fleeing political turmoil in the Middle East. Ms Cooper has described Britain's stance on the migration crisis as immoral, cowardly and not the British way. Well, I'm asking you whether you agree with her. And what's interesting is, this is the important question. If you are somebody who says, yes, she's right, yes, we should be doing more, then does that mean that you would personally welcome a, for example, Syrian family to come and move in with you and live in your house? Would you be prepared to do that? And if you're not prepared to do that, Alan in Milton Keynes, just before the news, said you're a hypocrite. Is he right? Earlier, I spoke to Jenny Marklew. Now, she's a member of the Green Party in Milton Keynes. She says that we should go further than Yvette Cooper. is suggesting, and taken even more than 10,000 migrants. And I asked her if she'd be prepared to put her money where her mouth is.
I've thought about having someone who's homeless come
Oh,
live
well,
with me.
why don't you? Why don't?
Say, would you like to come and live at my house for a few nights, have some rest, have a bath and a shower, and I'll give you some food? You know, I thought about doing that.
Yeah, well, you've thought about it, but you haven't done it. And that's the point, isn't it? It's all well and good and very easy to say, you know, oh, the government should be doing this, the government should be letting in 10,000 people. But if it actually came down to personal responsibility and all the people saying that we should welcome many more refugees into this country, if it came down to those refugees having to live in their houses, I wonder whether people would be quite so keen.
I think if there was a programme to organise it, then yes, and maybe that's something we should do. Maybe we should organise ourselves together and find people that are willing to. And you know, this is a temporary thing. These people don't want to be here forever, and they will make their own lives, and they will find ways to support themselves.
Well, do you believe her? I guess that's what this comes at. It's all well and good. I could sit here this morning saying, oh, yes, I think this is outrageous what we're doing or what we're not doing, and I would happily, you know, I've got another couple of bedrooms that 2 families could move into in my house. But the reality is, you know it's not going to happen, so it's all kind of empty words, isn't it? Maybe you are honest and you think, well, I feel sorry for people. I do feel sorry for them, but if it was to affect my life, then I wouldn't necessarily want that to happen. If you're being totally honest about this. Tom is in Milton Keynes. Hello to you, Tom.
Good morning, JVS.
Hi, Tom. What do you think about it?
The thrust of the argument seems to have changed. Is it we are commenting on Yvette Cooper's comments, or are we now asking each other whether would we accommodate Syrian refugees? So,
let's do a bit of both. I mean, what do you think about her comments welcoming 10,000 people in? Do you think we should be doing that?
I'm going to shoot myself in the foot straight away. I know I am with my first comment. Because
you're going to say yes, and then I'm going to ask you, would you let a family move in with you? And you'd say no. Yeah.
Exactly. Something like that. But
well, at least you're honest.
Yes, but we are a country of 60 million people. Yes. And spread across 60 million people, 10,000 extra people would not really be noticed. It really wouldn't. Because we are going to allow another 30,000 people in legally next week from the European Union. So where's the argument? So if we said to the European Union, OK, we will accept these refugees, but at the same time, you have got to stop your outward flow of your people coming into this country so that we can accommodate these refugees, because your people are not refugees, they're just economic migrants. So, but these people are refugees where their own government has a policy of killing them. So that's why they're trying to get away. So there's a compromise deal, isn't there?
But, so where are those people going to live? Because isn't it a bit different?
Well, where would the next 20,000 migrants from the EU coming in next week live as well?
I'll tell you why I think it's a bit different. And I may be talking nonsense. I don't know. I'm not the expert on this. But surely, if you're, for example, moving, let's say, from Poland to the UK, the chances are...
I hate this thing about Poland. Let's say EU migrants. Well, because Poland, I've got nothing against the Polish, but they always come up in the top of the frame as the prime.
Well, lots of Polish people have moved here, as I've said on this programme. My brother married a lovely Polish girl this year.
So an awful lot to England, and I've got nothing against Poles whatsoever.
Absolutely, neither have I.
They helped us get out of the Second World War quite admirably.
Absolutely, but let me stick to my original example, if I may. Yeah. You've got Polish people moving over to the UK from Europe. The chances are they know Polish people already in the UK. They've got friends, they've got maybe neighbours or whoever it would be that they now can reach out to in the UK before they come. And they say, I'm thinking of moving over to the UK. Their friends in the UK can say, oh, that's fine. I know of someone who's got a room in a house. You can come over. Oh, and we'll keep our ear to the ground. We'll see if there's any work out there. You know, you've got that kind of build-up before somebody moves to the UK. Whereas what we're saying with these refugees is totally different. We're taking people who possibly have no contacts in this country at all, no base in this country at all, may have no English whatsoever, and don't know anybody in this country that has English. They have nowhere to live. They have nothing that they can even start to prepare in terms of where they can live. So when they arrive in the UK, won't they be 100% dependent on the authorities here to look after them?
I can agree partly with your argument, but I would suggest that existing immigrants inward bound to the UK are in the same position anyway as the possible refugees, because I would suggest, given life's experience, that many immigrants into this country and not refugees are non-English speaking. They have no ways of knowing our customs and our way of life. So it's a learning curve. And these refugees, they are in a different position. Don't forget, there's a guy at the back of them, with a gun at their back, and half the poor souls have drowned in the Mediterranean just to get away from, the monsters that are ruling them. All right, we have politicians, and we may deride these politicians we have, but these are not monsters that exist in the Middle East. So the thing about Yvette Cooper, okay, she's up front, she's trying to get in the Labour Party leadership campaign. Corbyn's got the edge on her, but so she's trying another tack. It's not being a cynical politician, but she's saying something which many other politicians have not. But at least what the people in this country are saying is 10,000, yes, but then somebody's going to say, well, there's another 10, another 10, another 10. So what people in this country are saying is, at what point is it going to stop? And many comments in previous conversations which we've been having is that it's the post-war generation of people that have been on the phone, the baby boomers. Now, they grew up in the 40s and 50s and 60s, and it was quite a settled country at that point. But in the last, 10 years, 15 years, there's been this sudden explosion, influx of people into this country. And the baby boomers are confused because all of a sudden they've seen their country turn totally 360 degrees. They can't understand it. So therefore you're getting this kind of reaction from the baby boomers. When us baby boomers finally fade away into the distance, the next generation come along who grew up with the immigrants. You might find a different program down the line in 30, 40 years' time.
Tom, thank you so much for your call. Interesting, and thank you for your honesty as well. I mean, Tom's saying, I do think that we could accept 10,000. I don't think that it would have a huge effect. But Tom also saying, but I wouldn't necessarily want a family living with me. And, I mean, that's honest, really, isn't it? Maybe that's how you feel as well. Rick is in Bedford. Hello to you, Rick.
Hi, JVS.
Hello. What do you think, then? Do you agree with Yvette Cooper that the UK should accept 10,000 migrants?
No, I don't agree with her. It would pretty much cripple this country, I reckon, because it's not going to be 10,000. It'll be 10,000 initially, then the rest of the families will want to come over. So you're looking at 20,000 and 30,000. It's just going to be a snowball effect. My point is, I would have a family in my house. I would actually take a family in.
You are that person that would welcome a refugee family into your home?
Yes. The reason is, about 3 months ago, there was a post on my Facebook, and it was a father with 2 kids. And
I know, the guy on the boat and the look in his face, yeah.
That's the one, yep.
Yeah.
I would take him in, but I wouldn't take anybody from Calais because they are opportunities to me. Now, let's say me and you, we was in that country, we've just got on a boat, we've just landed, we didn't sink, we've got onto the beach of Hungary. Now, I know I've made it, I'm safe, I'm not going to be killed by ISIS. I'll be kissing the ground thinking I'm alive. Probably you would be as well. We could actually say, right, we've made it, we're going to stay here. But no, we're going to roll the dice. We're going to go, right, let's go to England. Because we know once we get to England, they give us a house or whatever they give us more than Hungary will. So that is why we're getting all these people in Calais. And the other thing is that these people in Calais, how do we know that some of them aren't ISIS anyway? That is...
Okay.
You know?
I mean, it's a slightly more complicated argument if we start talking about how we determine whether people coming into this country are members of ISIS. Let me go back to the point that you made. That's really interesting. The fact that you said you would welcome in a family into your house.
Yes.
If that's the case, then why haven't you already got a family in much need living with you now? Because there are lots of people out there, lots of heartbreaking stories that I could tell you about people in this country who need somewhere to live.
well, we've only got a 2-bedroom house, but before everybody phones in saying, oh, we should give a roof over the head of a homeless person, we already did. We went and picked him up from Huntingdon bus station. Yeah, we did know him, but he wasn't one of our best friends. It was just a friend of a friend of a friend. We found out that he was homeless. We went and picked him up, put a roof over his head for 6 months. So we are kind of generous like that. We did put a roof over the head of one of our friends' friends because they got kicked out of the house. So we did it twice, not once, but we did it twice.
So would you like, I mean, are you openly volunteering now on the programme to house a refugee?
I would. I'd have to ask the wife, whether she'd feel the same way, but me personally, I would. If the wife turns around and says, yeah, we would do it, then yeah, we would do it.
And you wouldn't mind the fact that you wouldn't know how long that person would live with you for, what kind of responsibility you would have to take financially for that person, how you would have to deal with maybe emotional issues that person would have, having left friends or family in their war-torn country, maybe having lost members of their family?
Well, I'm just a lorry driver. I'm not a shrink or anything like that. So
that's the point, though.
I didn't think of those sides of things. But at the end of the day, a roof is a roof. If you haven't got a roof, you're just looking at stars.
Rick, thank you very much. George is in Bedford. Hello, George.
Yeah, hi.
Hello, George. What are your thoughts?
A comment by Barack Obama suggesting Europe should do more. I think his country and a lot of other countries in the world should do more, because I think it doesn't have to be a European problem. We're all part of the same world, aren't we?
I think that point is really important, and I think America is maybe getting off scot-free with this because ultimately they're so far away.
If you look at the logistics, there's 50 states in the USA, or 52, whatever it is. Every state in the USA is larger than the whole of the British Isles, and larger than many European countries. And you take a county like Texas, for example, I mean, the size of the place and how rich it is, they could take their share, each county, and nobody will notice. Nobody will notice. Same thing with North America, Australia, you know.
The thing is, they don't need to, though. Because these people are not turning up on their shores. These people are not turning up at their bus stops or their train stations. These people they're nowhere near America. Yeah, they're arriving in Europe. And
it's convenient for them to say that. I mean, but as I said, we're all on the same planet. You know, because it's America. You know, during the First and Second World War, a lot of European refugees turned up in the USA, you know.
The depressing part about all of this, George, is that many of the issues that we are seeing and many of the reasons why people are leaving the Middle East, they are as a consequence of wars that we have been involved in. They are as a consequence of, for example, the Iraq War. They're as a consequence of the situation in Afghanistan. All of these wars have had an effect on the number of people that are now desperately trying to flee their countries because their countries are either destroyed or are just not being governed in the kind of way that they need to be governed, and they're dangerous.
So
I guess the rest of Europe could actually turn around and say, how dare you, America and the United Kingdom, how dare you? You have gone into these countries. You have fundamentally gone into these countries. You have destabilised these countries. You have, for whatever reason, got rid of the leaders that kept a level of stability in these countries, even if it was barbaric control that they had over people. You've done this, and now we as European countries, we as Germany, we as Hungary, we as all those other European countries are having to pick up the pieces because you're now turning around and saying, well, we don't want them living here.
Well,
That's what's quite embarrassing about all of this, isn't it?
It is, yeah. That's exactly the point. They should. they were in part, not completely, but in part to blame. So I think they should take their share of the, they show the responsibility of.
George, thank you very much. Madeline in Royston. Hello, Madeline.
Hello there.
Hi, Madeline. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, what a big mess. I've been listening to your programme this morning, and there's been an awful lot of sense talked, both for and against. So I won't go back over that. But the point that I would like to make is, what are we doing? All these millions of thousands of people that we're seeing arriving on the shores of Italy and Greece and so on and so forth, and more coming, from what I can gather. What are we actually doing we call them refugees, but actually are they all refugees? And I actually wonder if they are. I think we may have a mixture of refugees, yes, genuine ones. You can tell that by some of the faces, the look on their faces, and obviously your heart goes out to them. But then you've got other people who you think, are you a genuine refugee or are you just an economic migrant? And it's the genuine refugees that we should be helping.
How many?
How many? Well, as many as there are, really.
But you could be talking millions then.
Absolutely. It's a big, big mess.
So we should welcome in potentially millions of refugees into this country.
Well, I think Europe, America, I think the whole world, like your last speaker said, I think the whole world should share the responsibility for these people. I mean, what can you do with them?
Madeline?
Let them starve.
Madeline, thank you very much for your call. Matt texts to say 10,000 is nothing. We've absorbed 480,000 Polish people easily enough. We need to do our bit and help these refugees. We're starting to look like a very mean and very selfish country.